Health and safety. The law places responsibility for health and safety on the employer and the employee. It is a joint responsibility. The Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 was introduced primarily to promote and improve health and safety at work. This act has been supplemented by various regulations and guidelines. The Workplace, Health, Safety and Welfare Regulations 1992. These regulations are concerned with the working environment. Employers must make sure that the workplace is safe and suitable for the task being carried out there, and there are no risks for employees or others. Manual Handling Operations Regulations 1992, as amended in 2002. These regulations focus on minimizing risks to health and safety with regard to moving and assisting activities. Control of Substances Hazardous to Health Regulations. COSH. The COSH regulations require employers to control substances that can harm workers' health. These substances must be identified and risk assessments undertaken. RIDDOR 1995. This is an abbreviation for Reporting of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrences. There are many infectious diseases which need to be notified to the appropriate authority, and you are also required to report injuries and dangerous occurrences. Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999. Employers are required to take steps to manage health and safety at work. They must carry out risk assessments, and if there are more than 5 employees, the findings of the risk assessment must be recorded. Health and Safety Policies and Procedures. You should already have received training in and been given a copy of any policies and procedures relating to health and safety. Your role as a care worker is highlighted particularly in the area concerning health and safety. If you have any concerns, it is your responsibility to notify your employer immediately so that appropriate action can be taken. If these policies are not in place, the likelihood of harm or abuse could increase. You and your employer have particular responsibilities for health and safety, and these are outlined in Handout 1. The individuals you support should follow health and safety advice given to them, and should cooperate with you to use appropriate equipment safely. In other words, every individual has a responsibility for their own health and safety. It's not just up to you. Similarly, your colleagues and any visitors to the care setting should contribute to maintaining health and safety by paying attention to such things as security, hand washing, and smoking restrictions. Know what you must and must not do in relation to general health and safety until you are competent. It's important that you don't carry out any health and safety task for which you have not been trained. For example, first aid, administering medication, moving and assisting, and food hygiene. To undertake any of these tasks without proper training could endanger the service user and you. Your training should be regularly updated to make sure that you are using the latest techniques or information. You should speak with your manager if you feel you need further training in any area to make you competent. If you are working in a service user's home, you may be asked to carry out a task for which you have not been trained and are not competent. You're particularly vulnerable as you may be working alone and can't immediately seek further advice. You should explain to the person that you are not able to help them immediately, but will ask your supervisor for guidance at the first opportunity. You must protect yourself and the service user from harm. Know who to ask for advice and support about health and safety at work. As well as asking your supervisor or manager for further help and support, the internet is also a very useful tool. The Health and Safety Executive website will give you access to accurate and up-to-date information. You could also read journals, attend short courses, or visit your local library. Health and Safety Risk Assessments. The Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999 require that employers take steps to manage health and safety at work. They are required to carry out risk assessments, and if there are more than 5 employees, the findings of the risk assessment must be recorded. Risk assessments are part of managing health and safety in the workplace. These assessments set out to carefully examine what could cause harm to people and then to put controls in place to reduce or eliminate risk. The law requires employers to protect people so far as is reasonably practicable. Handout 2 outlines the stages of risk assessment. When working in an individual's home, you're more likely to find hazards in the environment. Very often this is because the person does not realise there are any particular hazards in their home, and you may be able to talk with them about this. For example, you may find rugs which are turned up at the corners, furniture too near electric fires, or frayed electric cables. You should look around the environment and be aware of the possible health and safety risks. Hazards can appear at any time and mustn't be ignored. Your organisation will have a procedure for you to report such risks and hazards, and you should be familiar with this. Any risks should be reported immediately to the appropriate person, so that the risk of an accident is minimised. Moving and assisting. The words used to describe this task can be very confusing. In care practice, terminology is constantly changing, but laws cannot be changed as quickly, so you may find reference to moving and positioning, moving and handling, moving and assisting, and manual handling. In order to simplify this, we will use the term moving and assisting, as this is the current terminology in the National Minimum Training Standards. We cannot, of course, change the name of particular laws and regulations already in existence. Key legislation that relates to moving and assisting. Employers and employees have specific responsibilities under certain legislation, including the Manual Handling Operations Regulations 1992, as amended in 2002, the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, RIDDOR, Reporting of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrences Regulations, LOLA, Lifting Operations and Lifting Equipment Regulations, PUWER, Provision and Use of Work Equipment Regulations 1998. The Manual Handling Operations Regulations 1992, as amended in 2002, apply to a wide range of manual handling activities, including lifting, lowering, pushing, pulling or carrying. The load may either be inanimate, such as a box or trolley, or animate, a person or an animal. The regulations require you to follow safe moving and assisting procedures, only carry out tasks for which you have been trained, use equipment properly, make sure that you do not put other people at risk, inform your supervisor if you identify any hazardous moving and assisting activities. Risk assessment in moving and assisting. It is the responsibility of your employer to make an adequate assessment of all manual handling activities where there could be a risk of injury. If there could be a risk of injury, the employer must then take action to eliminate or reduce the risk, insofar as is reasonably practicable. Within risk, we need to consider not just the realistic likelihood, but the severity and the potential frequency of the possible harm. When assessing risk, be realistic. What could happen, and what will the consequences of that event be? Risk assessment is dynamic, particularly in the care of other people, as people change and have individual and specific needs. Risk assessment is everyone's responsibility. Always stop and think. Make an on-the-spot assessment. Training. The risk of someone being injured through carrying out a manual handling task will increase if proper training has not been given. You need to have regular training in safe moving and handling procedures. Training should involve practical work under supervision so that you actually carry out particular tasks rather than just hearing about how to do it. Training is essential in the use of all types of equipment being used to assist people to move. Records should also be kept showing who has been trained, where it took place, and what was covered. Employers should put in place a training program to ensure all staff are trained and updated. It is important that all new members of staff should be trained at the commencement of their employment. You must ask for additional training or support if you are unsure about using any of the equipment. Do not put yourself or the service user at risk. Safe moving and assisting techniques. The Health and Safety Executive gives advice on good handling techniques, and these are in handout 3. For the moving and assisting of individuals, obviously procedures to follow will be different from those of an inanimate object, but will follow the same principles. Handout 4 details the factors to be considered for both animate and inanimate loads. The person you are looking after may need some support and encouragement to move, or perhaps some aids, such as a walking frame, transfer board, raised chair or toilet seat. If a service user is unable or unwilling to move themselves, then they will need to be assisted. Responding to accidents and sudden illness. Accidents can happen at any time in or out of the workplace. It is possible that you may be the person who is involved in an accident at work. For example, you may injure yourself while carrying out your normal duties, or you may experience aggression or violence from a service user. These things are usually unpredictable, but you should know how to respond to such emergencies. A sudden illness or accident may happen to an individual you are supporting. It could be a medical emergency such as choking, fainting, an epileptic seizure or burn. In these situations, you would need to know about first aid and what you should do according to your current level of training and competence. Here is a list of some of the different types of accidents and sudden illnesses that may occur in the course of your work. Heart attack, choking, shock, epileptic seizure, fractures, burns and scalds, severe bleeding, poisoning, electrical injuries, fainting. You shouldn't try to carry out first aid procedures for which you haven't been trained. Make sure you know and follow your work settings procedures for dealing with any emergency situation which may occur. This may mean summoning up help immediately from a competent person. Medication and healthcare tasks. You need to understand your organization's policies and procedures in relation to medication and healthcare tasks, and how to apply these in relation to the individuals you support. It's very important that you know what you can and cannot do in relation to medication and healthcare procedures at this stage of your training. For example, you must not administer medication until you have been trained to do so. Healthcare tasks include any medical procedures carried out as part of a care plan. For example, those relating to colostomy, catheter and injections. Failure to follow these guidelines could result in serious injury to the service user. Handling hazardous substances. Control of substances hazardous to health regulations. COSH. The COSH regulations require employers to control substances that can harm workers' health. Your employer must identify which are hazardous substances, and these could include such items as cleaning materials, adhesives, bleach, pesticides, acids and other chemicals. Details of these hazardous substances should be available to you to inform you and raise your awareness of any risks involved. This is particularly important when working in a service user's home, as you are likely to be exposed to a wide range of potentially harmful substances, for example, bleach, disinfectant and other chemicals used for general cleaning. Your employer must complete a risk assessment on each of the substances. If you have to deal with hazardous substances, you should have the appropriate protective equipment such as goggles, aprons and gloves. Your role as a care worker will involve dealing with bodily waste, for example incontinence pads and possibly discarded dressings. These must be disposed of according to your employer's policy and usually by means of yellow bags. Clinical waste will also be collected from an individual's home and disposed of appropriately. This service is usually provided by the local council, and specific bags or sharps boxes are provided for this purpose. Providing cleaning products are stored and used in accordance with the manufacturer's suggestions, they shouldn't create a significant risk to either yourself or the service users. Some chemical cleaning materials produce toxic fumes, and these products shouldn't be mixed together even if they appear to be similar. If you are in any doubt or have any concerns, again, you should consult your employer. Promoting fire safety. In order to learn how to detect and prevent fires occurring, it is first necessary to look at how a fire starts. For a fire to start, 3 things are needed: a source of ignition or heat, fuel, oxygen. This is known as the fire triangle. If any one of these is missing, a fire cannot start. More information on the fire triangle is in handout 5. Following appropriate fire procedures. As a care worker, you will need to be able to understand how to follow the appropriate fire procedures. What is the procedure for raising the alarm? What is the signal for a fire or smoke alarm? Who will contact the emergency services? What are you supposed to do? Where should you assemble? In order to help prevent problems of evacuation, you should always be alert to obstacles which could block an escape door. Always maintain clear evacuation routes. You can help reduce the risk of fire in an individual's home by giving good advice, and also by assisting them to make changes in the environment. For example, advising the use of fire or smoke alarms, advising that appliances are checked thoroughly and maintained well, ensuring all cigarettes are properly extinguished, making sure heaters are not too close to curtains or furniture, ensuring that any chemicals or flammable items are stored correctly, unplugging unused electrical equipment at night, for example televisions, checking that electrical wiring is not frayed and dangerous. Some service users may have a fire extinguisher in their home, so you should be trained in the use of these. Smoke detectors also raise an alarm that can give individuals time to get to safety. Fire blankets are also common in kitchens and can also be useful for dealing with chip pan fires. In most situations, service users won't have any equipment to deal with fire, so prevention is the most effective way of safeguarding them. When working in an individual's home, you need to make sure where possible that you know the risks associated with fire and take appropriate action to minimize these. People have the right to make their own decisions, but your advice and support is vital. Escape routes should be worked out from each room and discussed with the individual. Security at work. As a care worker, you should be aware of security measures in the workplace. Security arrangements are necessary to protect staff and service users. There will need to be a system in place to screen callers to your care establishment. These will be in place to protect service users from unwelcome callers and possibly theft. If you're in any doubt about a caller, you should ask for identification. Every visitor should sign the visitor's book on arrival and exit. In some work settings, an identification badge is given to each caller, which identifies them as being genuine. Information on service users should also be treated carefully and shared on a need-to-know basis. If you are asked for personal information about a service user, you should seek advice from your supervisor. If you are working with an individual in their own home, you will need to make sure that security measures are taken to keep them safe. Individual front doors can be fitted with eye holes so that any caller can be seen before the door is opened. Chains on doors are also very effective. You may be asked to give individuals advice on how to make their home more secure. There may also be risks to your personal safety in your work setting, especially if you are working alone or at night. Someone should always know where you are. There should be policies and procedures in place to protect you, and you should follow them. Some establishments have a single person responsible for security on a day-to-day basis, but more often the responsibility is shared because of the nature of shift work in the care sector. As well as knowing what your own responsibilities are in connection with security, You also need to know how the security system works. For example, you need to be familiar with the locks, alarms, automatic lights, and any other security devices in place within the establishment. It's also important to be able to recognize when something is wrong. In other words, know what a particular flashing light may mean on a security system board. Equally important is to know how to react to any breaches of security, especially if you're working on your own. You'll also need to be familiar with your organization's policy on missing persons and bomb scares. Neither of these two will occur on a regular basis, hopefully, but you must know what you should do. Managing stress. You may be caring for someone in their own home or in some type of residential setting. You may be paying regular visits to an individual's home, or alternatively, you may be working in a situation where you are supporting several people. Every type of situation has its own pressures. Time is always a challenge for all care workers. You need to be aware of how these pressures can impact on your performance. An important area to recognize is stress and how this can affect you in your role. Stress is your body's response to something which disrupts its smooth functioning. It's normal for everyone to experience stress, and it can be positive. However, it can also become a serious problem. Handout 6 lists some of the possible symptoms of stress. We need to know how to manage the stress factors in our lives. Everyone's stress levels are going to vary. Some people may find a situation really stressful, while someone else may not be affected at all by the situation. Physical exercise, relaxation, and a healthy diet are known to reduce stress. A positive attitude is also extremely important. You may feel that you want to talk to someone outside of the workplace and access counselling services in your locality. Details can be obtained from your GP's surgery or by looking on the internet. Talking with your colleagues will often relieve stress, and regular supervision is essential. Food safety, nutrition and hydration. To help avoid food poisoning, it's important to make sure that the food you make for yourself and for other people is safe to eat. By law, you should have received training from your employer regarding food hygiene, so that you have a basic understanding of food safety, with particular reference to the fact that food poisoning is caused when contaminated food is eaten. Food poisoning can be extremely unpleasant at best, and at worst can be fatal, particularly in a high-risk group of service users. The most common cause of illness from food is bacterial contamination. Harmful bacteria can be found in raw eggs, soil, dust and dirt, pets and pests, humans from cuts, the throat, nose, gut, skin and mouth. Bacteria need certain conditions in which to grow, and they become most harmful when allowed to grow in food. The bacteria need moisture, time, warmth, from 5 degrees to 63 degrees, and food itself, for example, meat, fish, poultry, dairy products, and cooked pastas and rice. It's important to control the amount of time that food is in a warm temperature. You should take particular care to ensure that raw and cooked foods are kept separate, and raw meat should be stored in the bottom of the refrigerator so that fluid cannot drip onto other items. Food should be covered or kept in suitable containers in the refrigerator. You should be careful to check sell-by and use-by dates on food that may be in a refrigerator. If you have any doubts, you should notify your employer. Food preparation. Always wash your hands thoroughly before and after handling food, and always after a break, blowing your nose, coughing or sneezing, smoking, handling debris or chemicals, and always after contact with service users. You should use an effective hand washing technique, shown in Handout 7. If you take a break from your shift or duty, you should always wash your hands before returning to the workplace. When working in an individual's home, you may find that you do not have access to liquid soap and disposable paper towels. If you have to use a bar of soap, you must make sure that you rinse your hands thoroughly in running water. An alternative would be to carry with you a small bottle of antibacterial hand rub. If you have a cut or sore on your finger or hands, these should be covered with a waterproof plaster, preferably brightly coloured. This is so that the plaster can be easily seen if it should fall off into food that is being prepared. Again, coloured plasters are not likely to be available in a service user's home, so you could carry a small supply of these with you. You should always wear head covering and clean clothes, and preferably a tabard or disposable apron for preparing food. You shouldn't wear jewellery, except a wedding ring, or nail varnish, and you should keep long hair tied back whilst preparing food. Work surfaces should be cleaned before and after use with an appropriate sanitizer where possible. Fruit and vegetables should always be washed before use, and plastic boards should be used, different colours for different food types. This of course isn't always possible within the domiciliary setting, but it is important to keep one especially for raw meats. Food handling. Anyone who handles food is legally responsible for its safety. Hot food must be served above 63 degrees, which is piping hot, and cold food must be served below 5 degrees, which is cold to the touch. The guideline for temperature is particularly important when using a microwave oven, as they do not heat food evenly. Food which is hot in one place may still be cold in another. Some individuals living in their own homes may be unclear about how to use a microwave and not realise how different they are from a conventional oven. You should give them information and support to enable meals to be prepared safely. Many people like to use ready meals to save time and effort. It's important that the instructions on the package are followed accurately to make sure the food is properly cooked through. Foods which are particularly dangerous if not cooked properly include all poultry, meat products such as burgers and sausages and eggs. Food storage. Raw and cooked food should be kept apart, with raw meat and poultry kept at the bottom of the refrigerator. Cheese should be kept in the refrigerator in airtight containers. Dried foods, such as flour, rice or cereals, should be kept in a cool, clean and dry place, in containers which are pest-proof, and should be disposed of as soon as they are past their sell-by date. Tins and heavy jars should be kept at waist height if possible, and tins that are out of shape or bulging or damaged should be disposed of. If you're a domiciliary care worker, you cannot decide how an individual stores their food. However, you can give advice where appropriate and raise awareness of the dangers of poor storage. Eating a well-balanced diet. In order to eat a well-balanced diet, an individual needs to make sure they have enough of the main food groups. The human body needs food to produce energy and maintain a stable body temperature. Food also produces the materials from which cells and tissue are built. The individuals you support should eat a combination of the following foods: poultry, fish, eggs, meat, nuts and pulses, fruit and vegetables, cereals, potatoes, bread, rice and pasta, dairy foods and milk, water and other fluids. It's helpful to be able to recognize some of the signs of malnutrition: constipation or diarrhea, dizziness, pressure sores, difficulty chewing or swallowing, tooth decay, loss of appetite, weight loss, always feeling cold, clothes which have become loose-fitting, recurring infections. It's important to note that whilst weight loss can be a symptom of malnutrition, overweight people can still be malnourished because they are lacking in essential foods for a healthy diet. How can you encourage good nutrition? Every individual will have their particular preferences regarding diet. There are several medical conditions which will impact on what an individual can eat and how food is prepared. Details of this will be in the care plan. You may encounter an individual who will refuse to eat a particular food which is an essential part of their diet plan, or perhaps insist on eating something which is harmful. If you are faced with this situation, You should try to discuss it with the individual, but also seek advice from your supervisor. It's very important that incidents like this are recorded. Other factors which can encourage good nutrition include consistency and texture of food and drink, temperature, variety, attractive appearance, portion size, enabling individuals to prepare their own food if appropriate. The environment is also important to the enjoyment of eating and drinking. The way tables and trays are laid out can make all the difference. Some individuals will prefer to eat meals in their own rooms, whilst others prefer company. For people who find eating and drinking difficult, there is a wide variety of aids available to help. To find out more about eating and drinking aids, log on to the Disabled Living Foundation website at www.dlf.org.uk or enter Eating Aids into your internet search engine. You may now wish to complete the questionnaire.